I'll start with a joke about a man who wants to reconnect with nature. So he drives to his uncle's cabin in the woods. The uncle has no electricity, no phone or internet. The man thinks it's the perfect place to get in touch with the natural world. The first morning there, his uncle makes him breakfast, and he noticed that the plate had grease on it. "Uncle, are these dishes clean?" he asks. "As clean as cold water can get them," the uncle replies. At lunch, there are bits of food still stuck on the plate. "Uncle, is this clean?" "As clean as cold water can get it." Now the man starts to feel sorry for his uncle, thinking his uncle is living like this. Maybe he should pay to have some improvements made to help his uncle out. He decided he's going to tell his uncle at dinner. At dinner, the man noticed food and grease on his plate and decides this is the time to broach the subject. Then the uncle's dog begins to bark furiously at the door, and the uncle yells, "Quiet down, cold water." So, okay, that joke was a bit dirty. But like the uncle, sometimes it's habitual to ignore plates that could be cleaned. The joke also reminded me of the uninformed habits that pollute our world and a misunderstanding of what it means to be interconnected with nature. Excuse me. For example, there are folks who like the idea of having a nice wild area to walk in, but don't connect with what it takes to keep our wild areas healthy or thriving. I have a friend who lives very simply. His dishes are clean. He has an organic garden, and much of his garbage becomes compost. His electronic devices are simple and limited. He lives on about 100 acres, most of which are wetlands. We speak a lot by phone. As far as I'm concerned, he's an expert on plants, trees, and various wildlife. He has helped me deal with perhaps a dozen plant and tree diseases and at least half a dozen identifications of unwanted species. Believe me, our country is way past harmonious nature just taking care of itself. I recently read about a new invasive disease killing maple trees in Ohio. There are naturalists on the job of limiting the spread. There is a tree disease resulting from global contact for most tree species, and a great deal of wise effort goes into preserving both plant and animal species. Back to my friend. He is quite intelligent, and I wasn't sure he really understood interbeing. I've spoken with him about rewilding. That's the practice of becoming still in nature so that you get a felt sense of connection. For example, you might sit against your favorite tree and open yourself to every sound and creature with beginner's mind. When I talk about mystical communion with my friend, he's polite and receptive, but it seemed to me he wasn't curious or really interested. We don't see each other a lot as we've aged. Last summer, we got together about halfway between us at a park. Right away, I could see how connected he was. It was like the birds were in his body, and likewise with trees and sunlight. I knew he was connected. He couldn't help but be connected. He just wasn't articulate. Nor was he informed about rewilding methods. His way of connecting emerged from many years of careful contact. I would call my friend an earth type, someone who works with his hands. An earth type, which is a typology based on elements, an earth type likes to work with the land and they're solid like the earth. It takes different types of people to complete a circle. A water type might be someone who flows, who can flow past resistance. An air type works with breath, can be good at speaking or remaining still. And a fire type has energy. They can energize what they encounter. Our metaphors can reflect these typologies, such as, he has his head in the clouds. She was born with her hands in the soil. Interbeing holds all the elemental forms in their unique expressions as part of a larger whole. We need the whole circle. So what actually counts is not what you know how to articulate, but how you actually interact with the flow of life. I recall that the existentialist writer Franz Kafka wrote that so many so-called average people were really quite perceptive. They just didn't have the language to express themselves. And there were people who were quite articulate, but not genuine. Image and selling are woven into our culture. This reminds me of a true story that Buddhist teacher Jack Kornfield tells. Jack Kornfield tells a story about his friend, Milton Friedman. The Milton Friedman, who is Kornfield's friend, is not a Nobel laureate economist, but a Washington speechwriter. Nonetheless, his name is Milton Friedman, and he was listed in the Washington, D.C. phone book. As Kornfield tells the story, his friend received a phone call one day. This was during a time when the economy was in a downturn and there were deep concerns in financial circles that a recession was just around the corner. "Is this Milton Friedman?" the caller asked. "Yes, it is." The caller then explained that he was the controller for an organization that managed several $billion of church finances and wanted to know if Friedman might have any suggestions as to where the money might be safely and wisely invested. After listening to the story, this Friedman replied, "Have you considered donating the money to the poor or for the environment?" There was a moment of stunned silence on the other end of the phone, and then a tremulous voice asked, "Are you the real Milton Friedman?" Kornfield's friend immediately replied, "Are you the real church?" The point of the story, excuse me, the point of the story is that images and messages can obviously obscure the actual truth, and the phrase "know thyself," made popular by Socrates, always applies. For Socrates, it was the beginning of the Socratic method, which was a thorough inquiry into important aspects of discovering our true nature. He went so far as to say, the unexamined life is not worth living. Henry David Thoreau echoed this saying with less certainty. The unexamined life may not be worth living. The point is to encourage introspection. To know thyself is to become aware of beliefs and bias, a way of swiping the slate clean to make room for discovery through inquiry. It's a way of learning to live more fully. It sounds a lot like beginner's mind. is what we need. We need to renew sustaining agreements with Earth. Anything that you do can become a sacred act of loving and connection, but you need to show up. You need to say to yourself, I am life through this act, or I am life through this situation. And then let your experience, discerning, and intuition guide your action in silence. We are living the play of life, and we are open. And if we are open, we will feel the worth of that, as will others who we connect with. The great mystic Ramana Maharshi was asked how we should treat others. He replied, there are not others. In other words, all life is connected. We can listen to the voices of the earth in its incredible variety of forms in life. When we are awake to what is and what can be, we will not be perfect, but we will feel alive. Zen Master Suzuki Roshi said, you are perfect just the way you are, and there is room for improvement. Improvement is not a task, but a process of maturation and growth. When we are in service to the flow of life, we experience the fullness of being. Our cultural narratives tend to focus on heroes, mystics, or some other class, some other special class of person who functions as light keepers or as pathfinders. I want to be clear. You do not need to be a mystic, empath, or hero in order to experience a meaningful degree of interbeing. I'm going to illustrate with something I learned through my study of Native American history. What I discovered is that the Ojibwa tribe was among the most spiritual tribes in North America. They were able to avoid participation in a long and brutal war with their Algonquin allies against the Iroquois nations. They were able to avoid this war because one of their visionaries had a dream to relocate to the land of wild rice. This was before the French made contact. The Ojibwa then contributed to their allies with medicine and medicine workers. They established a formal society, the Metawiwin Society. It was dedicated to spirit. An unbiased survey in the 19th century estimated that about 10% of the tribe sought and secured entry into the Metawiwin Society. Does that mean that the remaining 90% were not spiritual and did not commune with nature and beyond? Definitely not. The tribe as a whole held sacred beliefs and ways of communicating with nature. Most preferred not to be medicine holders or to commit to lifelong spiritual learning. But their level of interbeing as a tribe appears to be high. Likewise, we as individuals do not have to be committed to a life of mysticism and holding transpersonal divinity in a conscious and ongoing way. We simply need to align our perception to a way of living that flows with interbeing, to adapt a degree of indigenous values and priorities. I'm going to end with an intimate conversation with Mother Earth from Thich Nhat Hanh, titled Beloved Mother of All Beings. It's a bit long, but it's very good. Dear Mother Earth, I bow my head before you as I look deeply and recognize that you are present in me and that I am present in you. It is from you that I have been born, and you are always present, offering me everything I need for my nourishment and growth. My mother, my father, all my ancestors are also your children. It is your fresh air that we breathe, your clear water that we drink, your nourishing food that we eat, and your medicinal herbs that heal us when we are sick. You have the qualities of a mother. You are nothing less than the mother of all beings. I call you by the human name Mother, and yet I know your mothering nature is more vast and ancient than humankind. We are just one young species of your many children and the millions of other species who live or have lived on Earth are also your children. You are not a person, but I know you are not less than a person either. You are a great being, not in the form of a human, but in the form of a planet, a living, breathing being. Each species has its own language, yet as our mother, you can understand us all. That is why you can hear me today. That is why I can open my heart to you and offer you my prayer. Dear Mother, wherever there is soil, water, rock, or air, you are there, nourishing me and giving me life. You are present in every cell of my body. My physical body is your physical body. And just as the sun and stars are present in you, they are also present in me. You are more than just my environment. You are the body of life. I promise to be aware that your health and well-being is my own health and well-being. I know that I know I need to keep this awareness alive in me, for I am part of the interconnected web of life. But sometimes I forget. Lost in the confusions and worries of daily life, I forget that my body is your body, and sometimes even forget that I have a body at all. Unaware of the presence of my body and the beautiful planet around me and within me, I am unable to cherish and celebrate the precious gift of life you have given me. Dear Mother, it is my deep wish to wake up to the miracle of life. I promise to maintain awareness of interbeing to the best of my ability. I promise to maintain awareness of interbeing to the best of my ability. I know that my genuine awareness is the best gift I can offer you, the one I love. And so we end our conversation with love. Thank you for your kind attention.